This is Nicky G and welcome to Better Commander. Look at me, I'm a wizard, Spelliamus. Let's go back in time to a sunny spring day in April of 2021 with the release of Strixhaven. I can be honest with you guys, I kind of skipped this set. I mean, I followed it, I was pretty stoked on the Mystical Archives cards. You see, Strixhaven released with what was known as Commander 2021, with 5 commander decks themed around the schools of Strixhaven, but it also released with this set of sweet alternate art reprints in the boosters known as the Mystical Archives. Strixhaven was set on the plane of Arcavios. One couldn't help but draw parallels to Hogwarts and all that Harry Potter nonsense. Despite the similarities, Strixhaven set kind of had its own flavor, and Arcavios seemed like a pretty cool place. The set featured 5 schools that brought new mechanics, and they had their own unique feel each one. And in this video, I'm going to set forth for you a bunch of cards from those sets and why I think they are banging. Let's get to the brilliant analysis. I'm going to talk myself up a little bit, but first, let's take a moment to gather our magical wands, consult the bearded creep in the tower, and shoot a spell at the like and subscribe buttons. All you hot chips out there, you guys are the real heroes listening to all this drivel alone in your house in the night. Thank you. Now you're going to see lots of good cards from the Commander product, more than I could possibly get into in one video, but my personal favorite was Witch's Clinic. This is $6 for a land, tap, add colorless, 2 and tap, target commander gains lifelink until end of turn. This is a free roll spell on a land that can really make a huge difference for a deck where your commander is doing big combat, like Grevin, Sir Gwyn, stuff like that, or if your commander deals damage like Gyrshin, Starn, Kellermorph, or even Nekazar the Mindraiser. Alright, then we got Wandering Archaic. It's $5. 5 generic mana for a creature avatar. It's a 4/4. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they may pay 2. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. On the back, it has Explore the Vastlands, 3 generic mana for a sorcery. Each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library and can reveal a land card or instant and sorcery card from among them. Everybody puts those cards in their hand, gains 3 life. That's kind of a ding-dong spell, and I wouldn't really cast it. This thing is great in decks where you're making large amounts of colorless mana. Getting this out on turn 3 or so means you'll tax all those cultivates, rampant growths, or you get to copy them. Most players are content to let you glean advantage while they ramp, but if not, that's okay. It's pretty beefy too. It's a big 6-arm monster. Cursed Mirror, $2.50 for 2 and a red for an artifact. Tap, add red. As Cursed Mirror enters the battlefield, you may have it become a copy of any creature on the battlefield until end of turn except it has haste. This is an awesome card, alright? These 3 mana rocks with upside are so cool. You can get an ETB with this, you can copy some big beater late game. So many great effects to copy. This is a 3 mana rock that I like. Okay, this is a really interesting card. Selfless Glyph Weaver, 2 and a white for a creature, human cleric, it's a 2/3. Exile it, creatures you control gain indestructible until end of turn. This is markedly worse than Selfless Spirit because it can't be recurred, but it's a redundant effect if you want something like that. But wait, on the back, it's Deadly Vanity, 5 black for a sorcery. Choose a creature or planeswalker and then destroy all other creatures and planeswalkers. This is great in a deck where you have an expensive integral commander like Sir Gwyn, just clear the way for your big monster, and on the front side you can protect them. I think both sides of this are a little overcosted, but it's an interesting budget card for your black-white decks. Theoretical Duplication, 2 and a blue for an instant. Whenever a non-token creature enters the battlefield under an opponent's control this turn, create a token that's a copy of that creature. This is exactly the kind of card I love for Magnus the Red, some other Spellslinger decks. So you cast this in response to an opponent's creature and you get a copy. But what if they want to cast another creature? Well, you get a copy of that too. What if they're storming off with blink effects and all their stuff's going away and coming back? Well, you get all those too. It states whenever this turn. It's an interesting rules interaction. I love this, that this guy's just a little spectral bird. Alright, then we got Radiant Performer, 3 red for a creature, human wizard, it's a 2/2 with flash. When Radiant Performer enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand, choose target spell or ability that targets only a single permanent or player. Copy that spell or ability for each other permanent or player that spell or ability could target. Each copy targets a different one of those permanents and players. This is crazy in a bunch of decks. Zero the Golden Sting deck, just egging everybody up out there and their mom. Incredibly flexible card that requires creative deck building, and I'm behind this dancing queen, baby. Curiosity Crafter, this is one of the more expensive cards in the set. It's $4. 3 and a blue for a creature, it's a bird wizard, it's a 3/3, it has flying. You have no maximum hand size. Whenever a creature token you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. This is such a sweet, neat token staple. Are you making drakes like Talrand and Elandra? Are you making fairies like Alila? Are you making dragon fairies like Elminster? Throw the wizard bird into the mix, buddy. And that's not a curiosity that is crafted, it's just a dang cat. Strixhaven brought us some really cool build around Elder Dragons like Galazeth Prismari, $3. 2 blue and a red for a legendary creature, Elder Dragon, it's a 3/4 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Artifacts you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast an instant or sorcery spell. This is a really sweet artifact token deck that leans into ramping instants and sorceries. I think this guy gets overlooked, but it's fun, powerful build around. The mana cost is fair, the full art looks like a dang sea lion flying through the stars, dude. Alright, the next 2 cards are pretty interesting to me. Daemongoth Titan has hybrid black-green, has 4 of them basically, 4 hybrid black-green. Creature, demon, it's 11-10. I don't even know how to read these mana costs anymore. Whenever Daemongoth Titan attacks or blocks, sacrifice creature. This guy is not super good. It has 0 evasion, but I wanted to mention it for the Momioplasm decks out there and decks that use giant creatures for sack fodder. Gerard, Golgari Lich Lord, and decks that use greater good to capitalize on the high power. The power to cost ratio on this thing is wild. And then you got his little cousin here, the Woe Eater. A similarly weird card that needs a specific build around. It's 1 black, 1 hybrid black-green, and 1 green. For a creature demon, it's a 7/6. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice a creature. When you sacrifice this guy, each opponent discards a card and you draw a card, gain 2 life. This card is 21 cents. I can see it in certain decks that want sack fodder or the sack trigger. It replaces itself, can be used as a sack trigger if you need one, and denies your opponent's resources. If it had evasion, I would run this in a lot more decks. As it stands, pretty cool card. Angel of the Ruins. This thing's a dang dollar. 5 white for an artifact creature angel. It's a 5/7 with flying. When it enters the battlefield, exile up to 2 target artifacts and or enchantments. Has plane cycling for 2. I was really high on this card at first, and I still am really high on it in an ETB Blink deck. This is exile. They can't get it back through any regular means, and it's a 5/7 beater. It's very efficient, and if you have a Blink engine, no one will get any artifacts or enchantments to stick for the rest of the dang game. Tanazir Quandrix. It's a dollar. 3 green and a blue for a legendary creature, Elder Dragon 4/4 with flying and trample. When it enters the battlefield, double the number of +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. Whenever it attacks, you may have the base power and toughness of other creatures you control become equal to Tanazir Quandrix's power and toughness until end of turn. This is pretty bonkers in a counters deck, or you could build low natural power and toughness creatures to get that incremental boost. Build Hydras or Ravenous creatures from the recent 40k precons. Seems like a really fun mid-power commander, or it's a house in a Hydra deck. You got Battle Mage's Bracers, 2 and a red for an artifact equipment. Equipped creature has haste. Whenever an ability of the equipped creature is activated, if it isn't a mana ability, you may pay 1. If you do copy that ability, you may choose new targets for the copy, has equipped 2. So this is kind of similar to Illusionist Bracers, but requires mana to copy the ability, which is inherently worse. This is a decent replacement if you're in red. Lots of commanders rely on their activated ability, and if you have a particular synergy with artifacts like Osgir the Reconstructor or any of the red containing artifact commanders, give this guy a second look. Culling Ritual. This is $4 right now. 2 black and a green for a sorcery. Destroy each non-land permanent with mana value 2 or less. Add black or green for each permanent destroyed this way. This is kind of a meta call. If your group runs a lot of artifact fast mana, stick it in there. But everybody runs Soul Ring and Arcane Signet, plus all the other stuff they put out there in the early terms. This can set people back nicely, and it's a ritual that will usually put you out ahead. She's got that sweet Witherbloom swag, buddy. Which is where I'd be if I put on the Sorting Visor, which is totally different than the Sorting Hat. Monologue tax. Look at Timmy over here puking up all them gems. What'd you eat all them gems for, dude? That seemed kind of silly. It's $4. 2 and a white for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts their second spell each turn, you create a treasure token. This didn't pan out to be as good as everybody thought. Everybody's like, oh my god, it's Smother and Tide, blah, blah, blah. But it's still a decent enchantment. I would want enchantment synergies as a thesis for whatever deck this goes in, but once you have that, you're golden. I think it's a pretty good card. Archmage Emeritus, $4, 2 blue for a creature. It's a human wizard 2/2 with Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, draw a card. This guy is a dang Dumbledore mixed with a dang Matthew McConaughey. This goes in every Spellslinger deck, bar none. It's such a Magecraft staple. Are you gonna fuss with a man wearing scrolls as a belt dude with dreadlocks? I don't think so. Essex Fractal Bloom, 30 cents for this guy. 4 green and a blue for a legendary creature Fractal. It's a 4/4 with flying. The first time you would create 1 or more tokens during each of your turns, you may instead choose a creature other than Essex Fractal Bloom and create that many tokens that are copies of that creature. This is broken in so many ways, especially in green, where you have creatures who enter and create tokens. You got Hornet Queen, Avenger of Zendikar. So Hornet Queen enters, creates 4 tokens of Hornet Queen who create 4 insects each. This is a dang Fractal Bloom, buddy. Imagine if you came home and your dog turned into a Fractal Bloom. This is 30 cents, probably because it costs 6 and requires a board state to begin with, or you need a ton of mana. But you know what, so is Brutaclad, and he's a whopping powerful commander if built right. It's got cool looking art, but what the heck is it? Bronze Guardian. This guy's $1. 4 and a white for an artifact creature golem. It's a star 5 with double strike. Also has Ward 2. Other artifacts you control have Ward 2. This guy's got tons of abilities. All these cards have so much text on them. Bronze Guardian's power is equal to the number of artifacts you control. I love the flavor of this thing. He's got 4 arms like Goro. He's got 2 axes like a dang lumberjack. And in the other 2 hands, he's just got Hadoukens. I'm going to throw in a Street Fighter and a Mortal Kombat reference on this guy. Anyways, the Ward 2 for all your artifacts is way better than it sounds. All these artifact commanders from the past 2 sets love this guy. Dina, Soul Steeper. Look at the way she's looking at you, dude. She's giving you that come hither look. Black and a green for a legendary creature. It's a Dryad Druid. It's a 1/3. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life. It has 1 sacrifice another creature. Dina Soul Steeper gets +X/+O until the end of turn, where X is the sacrificed creature's power. This is a great build around life gain decks with black and green. She's ripping off pieces of her hair and she's making tea out of it. She just got back from Burning Man and she's one with the earth, buddy. Just a really cool, unique card with a sacrifice outlet, probably hairy armpits. And we got Princess Leia the Blade Reforged. It's $1.30. 2 and a red for a legendary creature, Spirit Warrior. It's a 2/2 with haste. Whenever Leia the Blade Reforged attacks, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. Whenever 1 or more cards are put in exile from your library and or your graveyard, put a +1/+1 counter on Leia. So if this deck is built right, or if she's in the 99 of a Prosper deck or another play from exile commander, this thing gets super big, super quick. This card is a house. It's got the enabler and the payoff right on it. Too bad it doesn't have evasion, but it gets huge and can be a great fling target as well. Alright, this is my 5th time trying to read this card because every time I do, I say Blex, Vesting, Pex, or something like that. So this guy's Blex. It's a $1.30. 2 and a green for a legendary creature. It's a pest. Other pests, bats, insects, snakes, and spiders you control get +1/+1. When this guy dies, you gain 4 life. It's a 3/2. Then you have Search for Blex on the backside. 2 black for a sorcery. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put any number of them into your hand and the rest into your graveyard. You lose 3 life for each card you put into your hand this way. It's pretty wild. This is a really interesting card. It's got that sorcery on the back. You would want some ways to return this pest to hand to cast, fill your yard with pests, then dig them out with reanimation effects. It's a sweet build around. I like this guy. It's interesting for all you weird tribal builders out there. Keen Duelist. This card's about $1.50 right now. 1 and a black for a creature, human wizard. It's a 2/2. At the beginning of your upkeep, you and target opponent each reveal the top card of your library. You each lose life equal to the mana value of the card revealed by the other player. You each put the card you revealed into your hand. This is great in slug decks. I mean, it's an extra card each turn, but that's, pretty good, but the loss of life really adds up. This goes in decks where you want to lose life, where that's a benefit. I always target the player playing on a lower curve. This is great in Abaddon the Despoiler because you're starting out with an opponent losing life and you're getting a card. I think this lady is a little underrated, honestly, very stylish to boot. I used to hang out with a girl who looked just like her in college and she always said she had a boyfriend, but we never saw the boyfriend, so who knows, dude. She might have been a keen duelist the whole time. Blade Historian. This guy looks like he knows a lot about crypto. It's $1. It's got 4 hybrid red and white mana to cast him. He's a creature, human cleric. It's a 2/3. Attacking creatures you control have double strike. Listen, that's amazing, especially if you want combat triggers or damage triggers. This goes great in Boros attacking decks. That mana cost is so funky. I wish I had just 1 generic mana. That would make it a little more playable. But this guy's out there, he's just talking to his blades like a silly goose, teaching him history. Oh man, then we got Rionia, Fire Dancer. It's $1.50. 3 red for a legendary creature, human wizard. It's a 3/4. At the beginning of combat on your turn, create X tokens that are copies of another target creature you control, where X is 1 plus the number of instant and sorcery spells you've cast this turn. They gain haste, exile them at the beginning of the next end step. Rionia is a felonious wizard. This is a really cool build around. I had it in Cadric where it did a lot of work. Any ETB deck in red really wants this too. I love the art as well. Look at all this cool stuff going on in there. His face is in the fire and she looks a little scared. I don't know why. Promise of Loyalty. This looks like that scene from Lord of the Rings where the dwarf says, "And my axe," whatever the heck he says. 4 and a white for a sorcery. Each player puts a vow counter on a creature they control and sacrifices the rest. Each of those creatures can attack you or a planeswalker you control for as long as it has a vow counter on it. So this is a pretty cheap board wipe that puts your opponents at each other's throats. A lot of times I have 1 Voltron creature, so this would set my opponents back and set me up. That's what cards like this are all about. You gotta mitigate the drawbacks, put it in a deck where you can take full advantage of that stuff. You dingus. So coming in at $3, we have Incarnation Technique, 4 and a black for a sorcery with Demonstrate. When you cast this spell, you may copy it. If you do, choose an opponent to also copy it. Mill 5 cards, then return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Listen, I've tried this card out and it's really good. Full stop right there. There's usually another player at the table playing synergistic but not impactful creatures, or has a lower creature count density that you can target with this thing, and you get to cast it twice. It's great. Solve the equation. This card's about $3 as well. 2 and a blue for a sorcery. Search your library for an instant or sorcery card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. Pretty simple card. You got Girl Harry Potter. She's doing a spell. Oh no, look out, Girl Harry Potter. Watch out for Professor Onyx. She's transmogrified into a Snimblefith. Plum the Forbidden, $3 uncommon, 1 and a black for an instant. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice 1 or more creatures. When you do, copy this spell for each creature sacrificed this way. You draw a card and lose 1 life. This is great in a sacrifice-themed deck, and I plopped it into Mahadi budget list, Zero the Golden Sting, a bunch of decks. I think I'm just paranoid about board wipes in my aristocrat decks, honestly. This also triggers Magecraft because you're copying the spell. Plus you got a card about plumbers, dude, and that's important work. I don't know what these guys are doing, but it looks like a union meeting. You got Double Major, $3, green and blue for an instant. Copy target creature spell you control, except it isn't legendary if the spell is legendary. Copy of a creature spell becomes a token. If you have this in your opening hand or whatever, your commander's less than 4, just copy it on the stack. Everybody wants a copy of their commander. This is a really cool card in a creature-based deck. There are tons of decks that want to make copies of big, beefy creatures, which is ironic because the art is 2 very tiny creatures. Now, you're not going to believe this, but this card's only $2. You got Guardian Augmenter, 2 and a green for a creature. It's a troll wizard. 2/2 with flash. Commander creatures you control get +2/+2. Commander creatures you control have hexproof. This guy, the flash on this is really good if you're running instant speed shenanigans and want to protect your commander. I can't believe this thing's only $2. It's kind of a rare effect. I don't have a deck for this, honestly. I don't know where it would go, but it's $2. Go great in a partner deck for sure. Perplexing Test. This is also $2. 3 blue for an instant. Choose 1. Return all creature tokens to their owner's hands. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. They just disappear. Return all non-token creatures to their owner's hands. This is a simple test, dude. Put this in a token deck or a deck with a Planeswalker commander with blue that's making tokens. We just passed the test, and I just passed a kidney stone. It's a win-win for everybody. And you got your old Velomachus Lorehold, $2. It's 5 red and a white for a legendary creature, Elder Dragon. Flying Vigilance Haste, it's a 5/5. Whenever this guy attacks, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may cast an instant or sorcery spell with mana value less than or equal to this guy's power from among them without paying its mana cost. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. This is a great value commander if you're building instants and sorceries, and a great value engine in like a feather deck or something like that. This is a really cool budget commander. I like it. This guy has haste, so you're instantly digging 7 deep and getting instant value. I like it. Put extra combat cards in there and you'll get a big beefy combat win, dude. Baleful Mastery, $1.30, 3 and a black for an instant. You also may pay 1 and a black rather than pay the spell's mana cost. If you pay that cost, an opponent draws a card. Exile target creature or planeswalker. Give your buddy a card, you know what I mean? Say, hey man, I'm sorry, I gotta take Animar off the table, you know what I mean? I'm gonna give you a card, you know? Go ahead, take a card, buddy. The exile effect is great for 2 mana, and it's an instant, so you can react to stuff with it. Strixhaven Stadium, 3 generic mana for an artifact. Tap, add colorless. Put a point counter on Strixhaven Stadium. Oh, cool. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to you, remove a point counter from Strixhaven Stadium. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to an opponent, put a point counter back on Strixhaven Stadium. Then if it has 10 or more point counters on it, remove them all and that player loses the game. This is a rock with a cool mini game, you know what I mean? Any deck where you have a ton of tokens, you may as well just stick this cool rock in there. Playing Blitzball in there from Final Fantasy X, these nuts. Oh man, here she comes. Eudora, Grave Gardener, 4 and a green for a legendary creature, Treefolk Druid. It's 5/5. Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, you may return it to the battlefield face down under its owner's control. It's a forest, alright? Has no other types or abilities. This is really rad if you're playing a Kadena deck, and that's okay with me because I have a Kadena deck, and I have this in there. If your morphs die, they come back as forests, so a board wipe can really screw your opponents and ramp you ahead. You're playing morphs, run this guy. I just wanted to point that out. 2 more and then I'm going to sleep. Auric Lore Mage, 2 black for a creature human warlock. It's a 3/3. Has tap, search your library for a card, put it into your graveyard, then shuffle. If it's an instant or sorcery card, put a +1/+1 counter on this little guy. The Auric, I think, are like the Death Greeters or the Death Eaters or whatever the heck they are from Harry Potter, right? There are a limited number of these types of effects, the tutor to graveyard effects, and this slots nicely into Reanimator decks. I love this guy. It's not super high power like Entomb, but it's really sweet. It's nice that it's repeatable. Alright, hear me out on this one. This card is only 35 cents. Ecological Appreciation. It's X, 2 and a green for a sorcery. Search your library and graveyard for up to 4 creature cards with different names that each have a mana value X or less and reveal them. An opponent chooses 2 of those cards. Shuffle the chosen cards into your library and put the rest onto the battlefield. Exile Ecological Appreciation. I like this in decks where you have multiple effects that you're packing in. If you need an Aristocrat and a Jund Aristocrats deck, a Sacrifice Outlet, a Token Producer, or whatever, you're going to have multiple of those types of effects in your deck, so just grab 4 of those effects and then keep 2 onto the battlefield and put the rest wherever it says. I like this in a big mana, big creature deck because it can also just get 2 big beaters out of there. You can just get some big monsters. I like this in a tribal deck. You get 4 monsters and slap 2 of them out there. The downside is the mana investment. It's not a great card, but listen, buddy, they don't all have to be, Enlightened Tutor. This one's okay. Man, this video got to be like 20 minutes. So if my voice is a little screwed up today, I'm on some cold medicine. Big deal. I'm going to live. It's going to be fine. Strixhaven had some super interesting cards. Many of them are pretty cheap, so check them out. This set had a ton of tricky, interesting designs. I don't know, man. I really dig it. Looking back 2 years and checking out all these cards that I put in my decks and seeing where they landed. It's kind of fun. If you want to go down a rabbit hole, you can look into the personality of the different schools and really get into the lore and all that stuff, but we only had one set to kind of delve into the lore, so I didn't get too deep into it. So listen, be nice to each other out there, okay? Don't go too wild out there. Sneaky G from Better Commander signing off.